Welcome to the LPP podcast. LPP is the Life Process Program, which is an online addiction coaching program. Very down to earth, meets you where you are. You can do it in the comfort of your own home. And it's founded by Dr. Stanton Peele, who has long been writing about addiction. And I dare say he's changed the field of addiction. Dr. Peele, thank you for being with me.
Pleasure, Zach.
We wanted to talk today about the fact that addiction isn't a disease, and which anyone who's clicked on any of the links on our site will be able to see that that is what we believe. And just sort of give the 10,000 foot view of how we come to this determination and why we believe it's important.
Well, the first core video is why, if you've been told it's a disease, and more people are hearing that it's not a disease, what you've been told is wrong, and more people are becoming dissatisfied with it. And more important than it's being wrong is it's not helpful. So I'm going to go through 5 points to explain why that's the case. Maybe Zach will zing in a couple, or I'll turn to him and ask him to add in. The first point is calling it a disease makes it overwhelming, and it makes you small in comparison. A disease is something like cancer that you have no ability to exert any agency over. And in that sense, you're being made minuscule. You're minimized your own strength and your own self. So that's a very bad basis for trying to change anything.
Now, someone might say, well, okay, you have a sort of an ethical point. It would be inconvenient if you call it a disease, but I, disease thumper, believe that it's the truth.
Well, in fact, we're going to go over the data that tell us that the disease theory is not based very well, in fact. And we'll give you the reasons why the people who actually succeed in combating addictions reject the disease theory, because feeling that something is a disease and that you're minimized actually makes it less likely that you'll change.
Take it away. Let it rip.
Another piece of data, going back to Mr. Disease Thumper, is calling it a disease makes you less stigmatized. Oh, I'm addicted because I have a disease. But in fact, the data show that not only do you become discouraged when you feel that what you have is a disease, but it actually is stigmatizing. People look at you askance. People are not sympathetic to people with diseases. They think of them as strangers, as somebody less than normal.
You know, I was talking to Ross Green yesterday. You're familiar with the name. We talked about him in our book. And he was just, it was sort of like choir preaching to choir, but he was bemused, flummoxed at the fact that we spend so many resources and such painstaking effort in schools to get a child who is having difficult time or has behavior that's concerning, to get them diagnosed. Where on one hand, you could be spending all that effort trying to solve the problems of that child with their input. And on the other hand, once you get them diagnosed, well, now what exactly? There are usually some sort of what do you call accommodative language in their individualized education plans because they have a disability. And that language is something like, keep this student away from all distracting environments while learning. Unreal things that make everybody a little bit confused. And what we found in students, like what you're saying with the disease model, is that really makes them feel singled out in learning, and it makes them feel singled out as human beings and confused about exactly what they are.
Which leads into the third point. Why and you're drawing a parallel between students in public school, elementary and secondary schools. Why would you not tell them they have a disease? You have a disease because it makes people feel hopeless and pessimistic that they can't change it. Uh, if we go back to the old days, you would never tell somebody who sucked their thumb, perhaps more longer than they should have, or who bit their nails, you know, you're a thumb sucker or you're a nail biter. That's who you are. You'll never be able to change it. Any common sense notion of dealing with a person you're trying to help tells you not to undercut their self image and their sense of their ability to change.
People could build an identity around themselves like a wall.
It's a blockade against the world. And as we said, and as we'll review, it makes you less capable of actually improving your life. A fourth point I'd like to make here is calling it a disease disables you from paying attention to those things that you can and should be paying attention to in order to improve your life. And two big things we can identify are your own feelings, kind of your internal set of circumstances, and your external set of circumstances. Just about any common sense person understands that if you're feeling bad on the one hand, or if you're in a bad life situation, you're going to have more problems. And if you want to get away, for example, think of being in Vietnam when so many soldiers were addicted. But if you're in a situation where your mood and your feelings about yourself and life improve, and your life, in fact, is better, is more supportive, is more solicitous, then you're going to do better. That is so commonsensical. Why would you ignore that?
We've talked about the reasons why not calling it a disease actually gives somebody a leg up in being able to put forth their best effort and be their best selves without being locked in a box. Do you feel like that dispels the theory in general? I mean, I guess I'm somebody tuning in and I haven't given this enough thought, or either I don't have a dog in the fight or I do and I've been told it's a disease. So what are you guys talking about? Yeah, it would be nice if it wasn't. Um, I mean, can we dispel the idea that it is a disease in the first place?
Yes, there's nothing about, we spent a century or more convincing ourselves that it's a disease, while a lot of people find it very hard to believe. And ironically, people write treatises about how one of the biggest enemies of the disease theory are general practice, non specialist doctors.
Right, right.
And it's sort of like, what idiots? Although they drum it into their heads now throughout medical school, why why would a doctor tend not to think you have a disease when you're doing a repetitive bad behavior? Why would your general practitioner, your old homeschool doctor think otherwise? Would you say, Zach?
So, well, the doctors know what diseases are. I mean, they're they're trained in whatever their specialty is, and then in general in virology and all sorts of different pathologies of medicine. And so the idea that when you have a patient that comes and you check in with them for 15 to 30 minutes and ask them how their lives are going, to the idea that this person who I'm going to ask, how are you doing? How many drinks are you having? Well, why don't you try to stop that? Giving them advice as though they could change themselves. It just isn't totally compatible with the idea that this is a lifetime disease.
If a person comes in with pneumonia, they know how to treat them, or
We
there's a
have
protocol.
antibiotics, right, right.
If they come in with a something they're doing on their own, a behavioral thing, those gosh awful helpful doctors are thinking, Well, how is this young person or older person going to help themselves? How are they going to change? And they want to discuss with the person what they can do in their own life space to make their life space better. General practitioners have a problem with disease theory because they're too darn helpful.
Or they might not have a problem with, someone might say, yeah, I know it's a disease. I was taught that in medical school, but they have a problem in practice, practicing as though it were a disease.
It's amazing how, even though we've been lecturing people stridently for the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years that addiction is a disease, most people have trouble registering that in their own lives. You kind of have to push people into the disease theory. Most people will, on their own, try to change their lives. We don't want them to feel guilty. Uh, we don't want them to overstress about the fact that they don't succeed instantaneously. But we want them to believe that they have the capacity to change something that's bothering them.
So our overall thesis here, or our overall warning or best advice, is that if you are coming to this podcast and you're hoping to get more information about addiction and you're questioning the disease concept, just know that we are saying that calling addiction a disease or thinking of it that way, especially a long lasting or forever chronic disease that you have to think about forever, is really limiting your ability to move forward in your life the way that you might want to. It sort of shrinks the whole frame. It's overwhelming. It sort of leads you away, it has gives you a learned helplessness away from your best intentions and skills and what it is that you might need to overcome it. And it's actually completely stigmatizing, opposite of what the disease model proposes to alleviate. And so not only is it not true, but it's not helpful. Like it'd be one thing if it'd be, like a helpful fiction or something, and it's not even that.
And I had a fifth point to make.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's good. I like your summary, but this one is a little bit of a superordinate point. Um, One thing that people are always saying is, well, addictions have nothing to do with who you are and what your values are. And as we're going to get into shortly, why do people change addictions? Why do people quit addictions? Why do they want to quit addictions? Because it's not who they think of themselves as being, because they don't want to be that way. And often going one step further, it's because they have some larger purpose in life. And we're going to get into that more when we talk about how to quit addictions in our next session by making use of the natural implements that people employ when, as most of them do, they quit smoking or some other addiction.
So that'll be it for this one. So we talked about the disease model, and if you are trying to overcome an addiction, we have two things to say about that in the next episode. One is people tend to move past addictions on their own a lot of the time, and if not, we can implore some of those the ways that people do it on their own, and that's sort of the help that we give at the Life Process program. But we'll sign off for now and talk next time when somehow I'll be dressed the same.
Way to go. See you next time.